Hey y'all. Yeah, I was just sitting there screwing around with the old internet, and just goofing around, and trying to find out what was going on with the world, and it would seem goddamn, I want to cry over this shit. It's actually disheartening to any real red-blooded American to hear this crap. There was a shooting in Texas, supposedly. There is an alleged shooting in Texas where 5 people allegedly died. Now, I do it this way because I want you to all understand. I don't fucking know. I haven't seen the bodies. I ain't seen the blood or the video of the shooting or none of that shit. I saw a couple of talking heads talking about that shit. That's it. As a matter of fact, I ain't seen anything that hasn't come from Fox News, CNN, ABC, MSNBC, Reuters, Washington Compost. Yeah, I like that particular term. I think that that's absolutely accurate. It is nothing more than stewed shit. I ain't heard nothing from independent sources. It's all been this stuff of, well, here's the video. Y'all ain't never heard of Photoshop? Just saying. I mean, if there was somebody who was injured in this attack, one, I could fucking straight up guarantee you that because the mainstream media is following it so closely. Now, mind you, I'm not changing my tune about how I believe that, if there is a particular mass shooter or what have you, that they should be ousted to the public. However, the fear-mongering and the fear porn that's going on is absolute utter crap. Let me point something out to you, son. All that a cop is a good guy with a gun most of the time. Sometimes, they ain't good guys. They're bullies with a badge. There's killers in costumes. And I've done had enough of that shit. See, in my time working with the USPA, I have learned a few things. One is that our enemy, which is the enemy of the free peoples of the United States, will never allow a crisis or catastrophe to go to waste. They will play that shit up and milk it to their heart's content, and I tell you what, there is nothing sick, or it's nothing so sick, as a Democrat with an agenda. Sick up here. And when you say, oh, but Blaine, you don't advocate for mental illness. This isn't mental illness. This is willing stupidity. Because any man who is worth his salt knows that a firearm is the number one most powerful form of self-defense that mankind can possess. The second most powerful form of self-defense that a mankind can possess, other than a firearm, is an air gun. Now, why is that? Well, because it's a projectile weapon that is moving faster than your eye can follow, which means that there is no way you can dodge that. Absolutely none. Now you say, oh, well, what about your views on nuclear weapons and your views on missiles and explosives and stuff? Those have their purposes, and they are not self-defense weapons. Nuclear weapons are area denial weapons. They are a military weapon that is used for keeping an enemy from engaging a specific area and then overtaking that area and taking possession of said area via military or militial use. Pardon me, I just had a cup of coffee, you know, me and coffee. Anyways, I'm trying to hold it down, got the burps and stuff. Anyways, you know, shoulder fire rockets, well, depending on the situation, yes, they can be used defensively. However, they're not normally a defensive weapon. They are an interdictive weapon. So, yes, you can use them defensively. However, you know, a rocket-propelled minor explosive is, for the most part, an offensive weapon. And what about explosives? Well, we just went over rocketry and shoulder-fired rockets, which, by definition of the Constitution of the United States of America, Bill of Rights, Amendment number 2, all American citizens have a right to keep and bear, because they are military-grade arms, and they are arms under that particular connotation and definition. So, what about explosives? Well, for the most part, explosives have their uses. They are mostly destructive or constructive, construction uses. However, some of them are area denial, some of them are offensive interdiction, like rocketry and, you know, rocket-propelled missiles, or rocket-propelled explosives, and say claymore mines. Just as a claymore mine can also be used for defense of a position. And then there, of course, is things like grenades. Well, grenades are actually, they only have 2 uses. You can't use them as a defensive weapon unless you're just gonna say fuck it, pull the pin and die, because you know, the blast goes everywhere. It doesn't just go in one direction. So grenades, still, they are an arm, and therefore should be allowed to be carried and utilized by American citizens who utilize them appropriately. So, as far as it goes, weapons of any kind, a knife can be extremely deadly, and it doesn't have to be some giant freaking knife. It doesn't have to be some big, long knife. Okay? Let me show you something that actually a fella used to stop the attackers on Flight 91. And this is why they're not allowed on flights anymore, because he stopped a terrorist with it. Yeah, a fucking penknife. Flight 91 was saved by 2 guys and a handful of penknives and letter openers. So, well, I mean, Flight 91, Flight 93, no, it wasn't saved in particular, but the target of the terrorists was saved. And moment of silence for those brave men and women and children. And of course, the children, they were scared out of their minds, but they still must be considered to be as brave as the men and women who were there, because they died when that flight hit the ground in Pennsylvania. I watched that happen. I was awake when it did. I had actually just woken up that morning, getting ready for my first day of high school. Yeah. September 11th, 2001 was my freshman day in high school. I missed a couple days of school. Teachers didn't really care. I was pretty much a lot smarter than a lot of the folks there. Not all of them, mind you. There were a few geniuses in my class. Genius in my class. Yeah, I get irritated about the geniuses too. That's just BS, dude. If you're going to use a plurality, use the proper plurality. And yes, genius is the plurality of genius. So, where was I on about? Let's see here. Oh yes, the shooting in Texas. If it turns out that this is 100% the truth, and that these people in Texas were gunning down people left and right, and we're not really giving a whole lot of shit about their muscle discipline or their not muscle discipline, muzzle discipline. I know that YouTube captions sometimes get that messed up. Muzzle discipline. So they are not exercising their muzzle discipline. They're not exercising their finger discipline. They're not exercising safety measures. They are only looking to kill and kill as many as they can before they themselves get killed. Okay, if those facts are true, why? Qui bono? Q U I B O N O. Who benefits? Because when there's a mass shooting, one, the shooters ain't benefiting from it. They're not getting anything out of it. They know they're gonna die. Or, no, there is no or. They know they're gonna die. And they have no remorse. It's almost as if they are programmed, or it is a specific mission carried out by military personnel. Now, let me point this out to you. Route 91, as much as the narrative says, it was one dude with a whole freaking shit ton of guns. Why was there a black ops team in place getting rid of massive amounts of guns and selling them off to the homeless people? Why? Why? Is the area where all of the bullets hit the ground, all the bullets hit everywhere, whatever. Why is that area completely repaved over not a month after the shooting? Why is that area not roped off and held as evidence, as any human's household would be in the event of a shooting? If you said, oh, it's because of corporate interests, well, you're not far off, but This has more to do with government interest than anything to do with corporate or alternative interest. This is the action of tyrants, utilizing a military force, especially a black ops team, in order to carry out and exercise a black operation on American soil. Now, just for reference, the U.S. military is not the U.S. militia, and the U.S. militia is not the U.S. military, and the CIA has abso-fucking-lutely nothing to do with the U.S. militia and the U.S. military, other than the fact that, yes, sometimes every now and then we have former agents of the CIA, the SIA, and I say that because I actually know what their acronym for the Secret Intelligence Agency actually is, because yes, it is SIA. The CIA is the Civilian Intelligence Agency, or Central Intelligence Agency, whichever you want to call it. But the SIA is the Secret Intelligence Agency, and they work very closely, in fact, hand in hand, with the deep state operatives here in America. Those deep state operatives are the ones who are interested solely in taking away things that you could utilize yourself to defend yourself, defend your home, defend your lives, possibly stop a counter coup, or stop a coup for that matter. Imagine for a second that Antifa wasn't all talk, and they actually decided to go and do a coup d'etat against the President of the United States for whatever reason. Or say that constitutional Americans looked at their Constitution and finally got fed up and said, well, hold on a second, because the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States, and the Federalist Papers all preclude the ability to oppose your government violently if they do not allow you to oppose peacefully. Okay? Now that is the actual way that's worded. But to quote a president of ours, who probably was the last president in the world with a set of balls on him, because if you look at all the presidents afterwards, and I'm including Donald Trump in this man does not have a fucking set of balls. He's pandering. He is a salesman. He is a Democrat. He is not a Republican, and anybody who says otherwise does not know the big D. Really, you don't know Mr. Trump. If Mr. Trump was a Republican, my ass would be spending the next 25 fucking years in prison. Not including the time that I would have already spent in prison for something I did when I was really stupid as a 17, 18-year-old. Yeah, I trespassed on Mr. Trump's golf course. Just trying to, walk from one end of Palos Verdes Peninsula in Southern California to the other side so that I could get from a friend's house to my mother's house, because I'd gotten stuck on the other side of the peninsula. Now, understandably, many Republicans and also many independents would be like, no, wait. You're just trying to pass through, you're just trying to get home? Okay, I understand that, that's fine, you just go on your way. But before you say that, here's what I did that was stupid. Me and another person And I feel really fucking horrible about this. I'm going to just come out and say it because I'm not the kind of person that likes to steal. In fact, if I stole from somebody, I'd probably feel so bad I'd go and turn myself in. So, saying that I'm a thief is not okay. And it's not tolerated. I don't tolerate thievery. I had no idea that this was the intent of this guy at the time. I mean, of course, yeah, I was living in the hood at the time. I wasn't a Minuteman yet. I was young, cocky, young, dumb, and full of cum. But situation was is that he decided he was going to try and steal the security guard's golf cart, which happens to be Mr. Trump's property. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I do know for a fact that if somebody tries to steal from me, it pisses me the righteous fuck off. And it's one thing if, you're just passing through and, you're just walking across the property, oh, hi, hey, neighbor, sorry, this was the short route, I apologize, I'm not trying to intrude on you, I'm just walking through. Okay, fine. Go about your day, have a nice one, brother. But if you come back here at night, expect to have a gun pointed at your head. Okay? Just being fair. Because I don't know who you are in the nighttime. I can see you in the day. But I don't know who you are in the night. You might be some Russian special forces or some Chinese paratrooper that just dropped into the yard. How the fuck am I supposed to know? That's why we don't trespass on other people's property at night, which at the time I was doing. So, stupid number one, I will take ownership of. I did make a stupid, okay? Mr. Trump just kind of went, nah. That kid, he's just a pothead. Let him go. Let him go. The other fellow worked at this golf course. Mr. Trump was not nice to him. This fellow lost his job. That being said, he did not end up in jail. He did not end up with any financial issues, did not end up with any lawsuits, did not end up with anything on his criminal record. It was all simply, well, you lost your job. You're fired. And Mr. Trump didn't press charges at all. Which, I'm sorry to say this because I'm a big fan of liberty and freedom and the right to choose your own path and the ability of the individual to self-sustain and to be, basically, whether or not you're a productive member of society, a good person in society. So, yeah, I extol anybody who attempts, always and everywhere, to be a good person. Whether or not you actually follow through with that attempt is up to you, and whether or not that attempt is fruitful, well, that's just up to, cosmos, grand design, whatever you want to call it, God, I don't care. The reality is that I do find ill and ought with the fact that Mr. Trump did not decide to actually have me arrested and just detained overnight, at least. It would have been a wake-up call. It really would have. I'm sad to say this, and I really am. I mean, it irks me to no avail that I have to say that I wish Mr. Trump would have had me arrested that day. It would have saved me feeling like I was the biggest, baddest son of a bitch on the planet. Because I would have been knocked down a couple of pegs that day. Instead of 6.5, 7, 8 years later, I get into a fight trying to defend my buddy's house. Lo and behold, I don't know who the fuck I'm fighting, but at the time, it just so happened it was his cousin. I had no idea. But his cousin basically beat the shit out of me and broke from here all the way across here, down through the middle of my teeth, down through the bottom of my jaw. Turned it into powder. Wet dust in my jaw. And then when because I'm a fairly light dude, you know, I may look like I'm, you know, well built, you know, strong ass fucking arms and shit. Well, yeah, weakling looking, but ripped as a motherfucker. I might be very well built, and I might be a mixed martial artist. But I'm also so light that when he hit me in the jaw, because I was in a forward motion coming forward, because he also hit me in the ribs at the time that he hit me in the jaw, it picked me up off the ground and tossed me backwards in an arc backwards. And I know this because of the scar that I've got here on the side of my temple here, where I hit a metal corner box face down, which would not have happened because the metal cornered box was behind me and off to my left. But I got hit on the right hand side, face down, on that metal cornered box. While I was sailing through the air, we'll call it a special forces knife because basically that's what it is, came out of my pocket, my back pocket. It was a folding blade lintel lock knife with a straight edge. For those of you who don't understand what a straight edge is, this is a straight edge knife. It is not a lock blade knife. It is not a lintel lock knife. It is a stiff blade knife. Yes. Okay. So, anyways, it was a straight edge knife. He pulled it up off the ground. Now, after stomping on my hand, after I tried to grab for it, toss it up underneath the bed so it wasn't, you know, anywhere in the fight, because I know better. That's why it was in my back pocket. I wasn't going to pull a knife because I recognized that, you know, that might be the only saving grace I've got. I don't know what this guy's intentions are. I do know that he's coming over, but I don't know what his intentions are. He might be there to just try and get into a fist fight, or he might be there to put my ass in freaking duct tape shackles and then proceed to take me out into the middle of the freaking Watts drainage ditches and off my ass there. And I might need something to saw through that, you know, a knife. So, of course, this was hidden. You know, it wasn't in plain view. There was no plain view about it. It was a concealed knife at the time. However, it was in a closed position, so it was not capable of being used as a tactical weapon at that moment. However, once it was out of my pocket and sitting on the floor, sorry, my nose is messing with me because it's been broken so many times. Alright, so my knife came out of my pocket, fell on the floor, and I lunged towards it because I heard it hit the floor behind me. You know, here I am, my ears are ringing like crazy, my head's going and I hear thump thump, and I'm like, what the hell? So I scuttle around and my knee scrapes across the top of this knife and I feel it under me. I'm like, oh shit. So I grab for it. I realize that, you know, he gets a hold of this, I'm a dead man. I grabbed for it, I had my hand around it, and he stepped on my hand. Now, my intention had been to toss it up underneath the bed. But that was not his intention. His intention was to take it from me, open it up, and use it on me. And you ask, well, Blaine, you're such a how would I say this? you're such an advocate for firearms and firearms ownership and firearms use in a defensive action, why didn't you have a pistol or a rifle or, one of your air rifles that you so often talk about? Well, it's because my brother was on probation. I'm not putting him in jail for something that, his cousin's going to do. I'm not putting him in jail because, I want to have my air guns around me while I'm about to ship off to the freaking army. That's what was going to happen that day. I was actually, the next day was right after Christmas. It wasn't even the next day. It was supposed to be like right after Christmas, which was 3 days away. Guess what? I was in a coma through it. Yeah, anyways, so, after Christmas, I was going to ship out to Fort Benning, Georgia, for, my initial, basic training, and, let me see here, Special Forces training and sniper course. Unfortunately, that did not happen. And I say unfortunately because I was really looking forward to it. I mean, this was my legacy. This was the legacy of the Price family. We are all soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, guardsmen, Minutemen, all of us. Every last one of us. In fact, both of my sisters are Navy. So, to tell me, the only adult male of my particular progeneration, which means that, my dad wasn't dead at this point in time, but pretty much was dead to the world, dead to our family, and, he'd gone down the alcoholic rabbit hole. Anyways, so I was the legacy of our family, and rather than go into the United States Army and go from the Army into the national, what was it called? Okay, designation 11B. SC, I believe. 11B Infantry Sniper Corps Battalions. It was pretty prestigious, and it's because of the fact that I had I still have a particular skill set, which I believe is something that has only become well known in recent years, and that is that I can watch a bullet leave a firearm through a telescopic sight or over the top of a set of blade sights. I can see the back end of the bullet as it leaves, and as it takes its tracery through the air and leaves behind that vapor trail. I could see all of that. My mind can comprehend that in the amount of time that it takes for a bullet to go 100 yards. 50 yards. My mind can comprehend that. It doesn't take that much time for my brain to catch on to things, and I just don't understand completely why. But in the advent of slow motion photography, 10,000 frames per second, 20,000, 200,000 frames per second photography, with the advent of this, it became possible for people to understand trajectories in a way that I do naturally. So I had a specific skill set that the United States Army was looking at very, very closely and was very interested in. Now, mind you, this is after being diagnosed with mental health disorders, PTSD, particular physical issues, pertaining to my neck and my ankle. Having been shot in the face before this, having been, what was it? I got hit by a semi-truck. I mean, there were things that had happened before I'd even signed up to go into the United States Army that would make most of these guys that were, fresh recruits go, holy shit, dude. The fuck, we got Rambo in our command. What do we need with you, Drill? Get out of here. It was, yes, I say that jokingly, but seriously though, I had a specific skill set that was very sought after. In fact, it was so sought after that the militia got to me before the United States Army did, because I had decidedly tried to sign up with the United States Navy. I wanted to be a SEAL. As a matter of fact, I wanted to be a SEAL so fucking bad. I didn't give a shit what anybody threw at me. I was ready. I said, fuck it. I'm gonna be a Navy SEAL. Fuck this horse shit. I mean, I love the Marines, I love the Army, I love the Air Force and all that fun shit, but I wanted to be a SEAL. I wanted to be one of the fucking, Roosevelt's badasses. I wanted to be one of LBJ's janky. I mean, seriously, I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. That was my dream. That was like the height of my dreams. Everybody else, their dreams were, nice house, nice cars, $1 million in the bank account, job security for the rest of their lives, retire with, everything that you'd ever want or need, be the freaking, like, everybody wanted to be Donald Trump. I wanted to be Lieutenant Neil Young, or Lieutenant, what was his name? Jack Young? Nick Young? Fella who wrote the book, trying to remember here, folks. I'm sorry. I really am. I know y'all have been sitting here listening to me jaw off, but I'm really trying to figure this out. It was a book that I read as a young man, and it was one of the defining factors of why I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. It was the book that was about Lieutenant Colonel Young's deployment as a Navy SEAL in Vietnam. Now, LTC Young, sir, if you didn't know, that Navy Seabee that you mentioned in your book, sir, who sat on that machine gun and defended the post at Dung Island, sir, that was my Grandpa John. God rest his soul. God rest his son's soul. They were good men. And they are why I wanted to become a Navy SEAL, aside from your book, sir. So, thank you for your encouragement, even though you had no intention. Now, that was a lot to get off my chest, but I want to point out to you that that was my childhood dream. Like I said, everybody else wanted to be Donald Trump. I wanted to be the guy sitting out there on Coronado Island doing sit-ups with the rest of the dudes out there picking up a log on my chest. I wanted to be out there literally in the surf, sand up my ass, because it was, that was my joy. Most people were like, oh, well, that sounds like a hard day. No, dude, that's fun. That's like, you guys go and you say, oh, well, my job, it's monotonous as hell, but I get to come home to my family and I get to live, have a homestead and be free. I wanted to be the reason why you could say that. Little did I know that the United States militia was where it was at. So, anyways, they got news that I had been attempting to sign up with the United States Navy with an interest specific to go into Bud's UDT SWIC. And that I had a specific attitude that was, there is nothing you can throw at me. Nothing that you can throw at me that will slow me down long enough for me to give up. I'm a forward-moving machine. So that was my dream. Since I couldn't do that, I decided, I'm going to go back. I'm going to be a construction worker and whatever. So I worked construction for about about a month and a half. I got hurt on the job. And I didn't wake up in time one day to get out in front and get to work. So my boss left me sitting there with my dick swinging in the wind, and I got laid off. Because I was hurt, and I did not wake up on time because I was hurt. My body was trying to recuperate, and I had no say over it. Or I would have been up and, at work again. I wouldn't have cared. I hurt, but I do. I don't care. I just get it done. So, I lost my job as a carpenter, laborer, framer. Basically, if it came with a hard hat and a hammer, I was doing it. So, when I lost my job there, my dad decided, all right, son, well, that's okay. I lost my job too, as a machinist and all that. And so let's go move out to the middle of the sticks and try and make carve out a living for ourselves, and try to be righteous with it. And so I moved with my dad out to a place up on a hill up by Rubidoux. And for those of you who don't know, Rubidoux is a mountaintop out in Riverside, near Pedley, Riverside. So Pedley's a little tiny town over here. Rubidoux's just across the Santa Ana River, which goes like this. Atop of the Rubidoux mountain, there is a little tiny, there was a little tiny white house with a pool and all the fun fixings. My dad knew the guy who lived there before he had passed away, and he was a really good fella, and he had given my dad a place to stay for a while. So we went up there and we tried to do our best to, earn our keep and do what we could. But because of my interests, at the time, I was still wanting to be military. That had never stopped. So, because of my interests at the time, my dad decided that it would probably be best for both of us if we moved to a more urban environment. So we moved to Blythe. That was about 2009. And just before we had moved to Blythe, I was contacted by an individual who said he was with a militia, meaning people being so armed, and a community response being willing to utilize force if necessary. Okay? So, a militia, which was a nationwide entity, known as the United States Patriot Army. This gentleman had, we palled around for a little while, and I asked him, how do I serve? How do I become? And he said, well, I heard from your dad that y'all are going to be moving out there to Blythe. I've got a buddy out there in Ehrenberg just across the river who happens to be very, very, very good at training Minutemen. So he said, let me get a hold of him for you. And I said, okay. And so, he got a hold of him, and, he talked to him about 5 minutes, all of 5 minutes, and said, hey, this is what this guy looks like. This is who this guy is. This is the kind of person that he is, and this is what he stands for. And the fella that was to become my lieutenant colonel, also known as my drill, he said, yeah, sure, by all means, but have him come out. So we moved to Blythe, and yeah, I basically lost my ass in the party circle. I lived here for about 3 years, no contact with Lieutenant Colonel, and making absolutely no efforts to show up for my first recce class, which was supposed to be the 42nd recce class, but ended up being the 43rd recce class. So it was 4 years in between those two classes. So yes, our classes coincide with presidential elections. Okay? They do. They coincide with each new presidential election, by the way. Anyways, so I showed up for the 43rd. And I signed on the dotted line, which is basically, it's a blood pact. It's a blood oath. I'm looking for the scar here. Hold on. Oh yeah. It's really faint. It's actually nearly impossible to see. It's right here on my thumb. In fact, you can almost not see it. It's right there in the crook of my thumb. Let's see if I can get some angle on the light here. Right where my thumb bends, right there. There was a scar right there where I had to cut my thumb with a knife, cross it just like this. Okay? And then I had to thumbprint an American flag. That was my contract. As a U.S. Minuteman, you don't sign on the dotted line. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. You don't sign on a dotted line. You sign in blood. And it's because we want you to understand that your oath is in blood. And it never ends. It never stops. You are a Minuteman. So, fast forward. 23, 24, 25. 3 years. Christmas weekend. (2012). I had come back after showing my service, doing what I could to help, and trying to be a good person. Following the letter of my training. I came back to California and was in that moment, I decided, you know what, I don't care what anyone says. I've got the confidence now. I've got at least the start of the training to be able to take this like a man instead of taking this like some little fucking wet behind the ears puss, and doing what I could as a United States Army soldier. So I went down to the recruiting office there in Torrance. Staff Sergeant Greg Herholzer Staff Sergeant at the time, Greg Herholzer, was to be my recruiting officer. And I went and I decided to try and sign up. And I fully informed him of everything that was going on in my life and everything that was what was my life and how the situation all was. I said, I want to serve. I want to be United States Army. The militia, while their intentions are all absolutely, the best of intentions. In fact, if you have a nationwide, statewide, or citywide, or township-wide, or just a few friends militia, join up. Join now. Don't wait for a recce class, because that's the militia that I'm in. I mean, that we have that rule. Because at the time, everybody was still caught up in this well-regulated bullshit, and it's not well-regulated. It has nothing to do with that. In fact, the original language of the United States Constitution actually states a militia being necessary to the security of a free state, not a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Because if it was a well-regulated militia, then that would mean that they have to have such and such amount of time through training, so much equipment that they don't have to purchase. Instead, the state or county board has to purchase, and the militia code of the militia standard of operations, not the military code of justice, the militia standard of operations, MSOP, actually points out that the disorganized militia is the militia that still stands as an American militia should and a constitutional militia should, but at the same time is not provided for by the American taxpayer, the American government, but is rather a motley crew of men and women who have made up their minds and brought their own weapons. Now, this is why the American militia was supposed to be made up of the people being so armed. Okay? This is the history behind it. So, and I know that, hey, this has dragged on a long time, but folks, just bear with me. You'll get a great deal of information out of this, and you'll actually be happy from it, because you'll understand the modern militia and the historical militia a little bit better. So, just bear with me, okay? So, age of 21, 22, I went through my first recce class. I did my 6 months term campaign. Then 23, I did another 6 months campaign. Then at the age of 25, I'd been out of action for about a year and a half. I was itching to get back on the front line, and I was real butthurt that that our regulations are what they are, and that if I was going to serve, I would have to serve here on American soil instead. So I decidedly tried to go and sign up with the United States Army, like I said. The Army wanted me bad. Wanted me bad. As in, leader of Sniper Battalion, leader of Mechanics Battalion, and the leader of the Torrance National Guard Armory all sat me down and begged me to sign that particular piece of paper. When all was said and done, I was not willing to sign unless I had passed my ASVAB. Because as a Minuteman, I am part of SSC, which is the Strategic Sniper Corps. As an Army soldier, I would not have been able to get into the ranks of the sniper sniper battalion, sniper troop, sniper corps of the United States Army without first being able to pass the ASVAB with a higher score than most. And I would have also had to have a perfect shooting score, which meant that it would have been something that I would not have been able to do. Because while my score, as a Minuteman is just fucking incredible. I mean, there's not a lot of people who can take and with 3 shots knock a dime, yes, that big, off of a 2x4 at 250 yards with a 22 long rifle. That was the qualification. You had to be able to do that. If you couldn't, you weren't a sniper. You were a marksman. And we had 3 coins on top of that 2x4 at 250 yards. Okay? First coin was a dime. Second coin was a quarter. Third coin was a dime. If you were able to shoot the quarter, but you could not hit both dimes off, you failed. If you were able to hit the dime on the one side and the dime on the other, but not hit the quarter, you passed. If you hit the quarter and both dimes, yes, 45 cents was the allotted amount which we were to use as a target. Okay? If you were not able to hit all 3 of those with 3 rounds, you were not qualified. I did it in 2. All 3 in 2 rounds because I knocked one off with the quarter by skipping the quarter sideways and into the other dime. So, yeah. That was my phenomenal score. Now, that being said, when I went and tried to, I wanted to go into the Army and I wanted to be Army, all right? I look back on it now, I'm like, what's the fucking difference? But, back then it was like, well, why not? Join the Army, get a little bit more experience, maybe they'll let you go and be a sapper or a sniper or LDT. I mean, that was really what I wanted to do. I mean, that's already what I did as a Minuteman, so that's what I wanted to do as a soldier. So, that's what I signed up for, or what I didn't really sign up for. I didn't sign on the dotted line I was nominated for, okay? So, a National Guard Armory, this is where you go to recruit for the United States Army active duty. Um, I went and I tried out, and I showed them, hey, I'm a good dude. I'm respectful. I try to do everything I can. I was raised as a military son. Um, my thing is that I have this problem with the word sir. Yes, sir. No, sir. Whatever you say, sir. Yes, sir. As you wish, sir. Was the way that I put everything because of my militia training. It wasn't yes, corporal, yes, commander, yes, lieutenant commander, yes, lieutenant colonel. No. It was yes, sir. Or sir, I, sir. Depending on your background. If you were a Marine, you were allowed to say that. If you were not a Marine, it was sir, yes, sir. So that was the reality of it, and so that was my training. I'd actually been trained so hardcore to the point where nowadays when I meet a fella out on the street, it's, how is your day today, sir? Or hello, sir. If I'm talking to my mom, or I'm talking to a woman of any age variety or group, it's yes, ma'am, or no, ma'am. Every sentence was finished with ma'am for a woman, and that is the respective that is supposed to be utilized. So, when I went into the Army, they were like, don't call me sir, I fucking work for a living. And I was like, yes, sir. Yeah, they hate that shit. It's like, no, call me staff sergeant or sergeant. I'm like, okay. Call me colonel or colonel. That's it. I was like, no wonder the Army's full of pussies. Yeah, just a jab, boys. Don't get mad. Don't get your panties in a bunch. So, I couldn't handle being in the Army because I was too respectful. I was not Army material. And so, I consider it both a blessing and a curse that I was in the instance of having to defend my life and defend a property which I respected because I respected the homeowner, and I also respected the tenants, and one of the tenants happened to be my brother, so I was uber respectful of the home and wanted to make sure that the home was nice and well kept for, and nothing got stolen, and nobody barged in on their own fucking accord, which this fella actually did, which is why he confused the shit out of me and I didn't know who he was at the time. And I knew he was coming, but he barged through a locked door, which is why... No, I don't give a shit if that is your grandma. Locked door is a locked door, brother. So anyways, yeah, I ended up waking up about 3 days later in a hospital bed, and with a detective asking me, who did this to you? Here I am, doped out of my freaking gourd on morphine, half my face caved in, a trauma suture that makes it so I can't even sit up to take a proper breath. And this woman's asking me questions. Yeah, I basically gave her the finger too. You're trying to get a coherent story out of a person who is freaking drugged out of their mind? Are you serious? So anyways, I that day got out of the hospital, and the police tried to basically make me Jumped through millions and millions of hoops saying, oh, is it not possible? Is it possible? And I was like, dude, the guy, I could describe him to this day. Nice grayish, black gray, salt and pepper goatee. No other facial hair, okay? Kind of bald, but with like a crown top. And then, you know, it kind of looking like Sideshow Bob from The Simpsons. The tufts of hair out the side and a tuft of hair up off the top. Or no, not Sideshow Bob, Krusty the Clown, sorry. Anyways, yeah. Krusty the Clown looking motherfucker at the same time, but he was, you know, African American. So I'm standing there and you know, I remember it to this day. The look on his face was, you know, this kind of wide-eyed, crazy, like, I'm gonna freaking kill you, motherfucker. And after he'd stabbed me, he left the same way. So I know he was on something. Drugged out of his gourd and trying to get more drugs. Probably sold that knife that he stabbed me with and then stole to get more drugs, which is why the police never found it on him, or found it in his possessions, or found it anywhere in the vicinity, or found it around his home, or found it anywhere for that matter. The guy probably sold it to his drug dealer. Anyways, I told the police this is what happened and this is who you should be looking for. This is his description. You know, and if you're wondering, yes, I know who he is after the fact. I know who the guy was after the fact. I mean, yeah, you get a phone call from somebody who's claiming that they're going to come over and beat the ever-loving fuck out of you. You kind of go,